Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Jai Hind. Welcome to this special press conference on Operation Sindoor. We will begin with opening statements by the three senior officers to my right here, who have been directly overseeing operations during Operation Sindoor. We have Lieutenant General Rajiv Ghai, Director General Military Operations, who will cover the aspects related to land domain. Air Marshal A.K. Bharti, to his right, Director General Air Operations, will provide insights on the air domain. And to my right is Vice Admiral A.N. Pramod, Director General Naval Operations, who will cover aspects on maritime domain. Following their briefings, we will move on to the question answer session. I now request the DGMO to commence the opening brief.
Thank you, Sandeep. A very good evening to all of you, ladies and gentlemen. You are all by now familiar with the brutality and the dastardly manner in which 26 innocent lives were prematurely terminated at Pahalgam on the 22nd of April. When you combine those horrific scenes and the pain of the families that the nation witnessed with numerous other recent terror on our armed forces and defenseless civilians, we knew that the time had arrived to make yet another compelling statement of our resolve as a nation. Operation Sindoor was conceptualized with a clear military aim to punish the perpetrators and planners of terror and to destroy their terror infrastructure. What I do not state here, of course, is the often stated determination of India and its intolerance to terror. It set into motion a very diligent and microscopic scarring of the terror landscape across the borders and the identification of terror camps and training sites. The locations that emerged were numerous, but as we deliberated more, we realized that some of these terror hubs were now bereft of any presence and had preemptively been vacated, fearing retribution from us. There was also a term of reference and our own binding, self-imposed restriction to target only terrorists and thus prevent collateral damage. There were 9 camps that you are now all familiar with, which were confirmed by our various intelligence agencies to be inhabited. Some of these were in POJK, while there were others that were located in the Punjab province in Pakistan. Nefarious places such as Muridke, the hub center of the Lashkar-e-Taiba, has over the years bred infamous characters such as Ajmal Kasab and the likes of David Headley. What followed was a careful scrutiny of each of these sinister locations, their layout, configuration, even the type of construction in each structure, and the terrain obtained around these. This was with an obvious intent to deduce and identify the exact vector that was required for their neutralization, as also the eyes in the sky that we would send up to ensure that we brought back evidence that we had indeed targeted what we set out to. The precise images of these engagements on that fateful and historical night have already been showcased during the first press statement on the 7th of May that was helmed by our Foreign Secretary. I have no doubt in my mind that we achieved total surprise, and those strikes across those 9 terror hubs left more than 100 terrorists killed, including high-value targets such as Yusuf Azhar, Abdul Malik Rauf, and Mudassir Ahmed that were involved in the hijack of IC-814 and the Pulwama blast. The line of control was also violated soon after by Pakistan, and the erratic and rattled response of our enemy was apparent from the number of civilians, inhabited villages, and religious sites such as Gurudwaras that were unfortunately hit by them, leading to a sad loss of lives. The Indian Air Force played a major part in these strikes by engaging some of these camps, and the Indian Navy provided wherewithal in terms of precision munitions. The Indian Air Force obviously had their assets up in the sky, and I will here request Air Marshal Bharti, the Director General of Air Operations, to detail for you the methodology that the men in blue adopted to successfully manifest this mission.
Thank you, Rajiv. A very good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It indeed is a difficult time that we have to come here like this and brief you. We could have done without this, but we had no choice. As the DGMO has detailed, the event was precipitated by the dastardly act at Pahalgam. The sequence of events have already been detailed. We carefully selected the targets, and out of the 9 selected targets, the target systems that were given to the Indian Air Force were the notorious training camps at Bhavalpur and Muridke, these being further from the international boundary. Through critical target system analysis, we analyzed what was to be done to annihilate these targets and plan to engage these targets with precision air-to-surface guided munitions so as to avoid collateral damage. The modalities of planning process, I will not go through at this instant. However, what I would like to show you is the results that we achieved through our targeted airstrikes. Could I have the second slide, please? Yeah, change, please. Okay. This is what the terror infra at Muridke looks like. If you see, north is as indicated, and to the right is east, where the international boundary lies. Could we have the next slide, please? Orientating. Just go back one slide. Okay. Please have a look at this red building, the series of buildings out here, and this empty ground. Next. If you relate, the empty ground is here, and you see this is the first weapon that is impacting. This is the impact point number 1 on Muridke training camp with our precision guided weapon on early morning 7. Next, please. Keep your eyes glued for the second weapon coming in and the second impact on the selected target point. Next slide, please. Third weapon, third impact. Continue. fourth weapon, fourth impact. So through these targeted and precision targeting, we addressed the target at Muridke, which was the terrain infrastructure. Can you hear me? All right. Okay, I'll come closer to the mic. Now we go to the next target, which is the Bhavalpur training camp. Next slide, please. Okay, just wait. So the effect, if you see, the impact point, if I can point out, this is the impact point. The ammunition has gone through the roof and it has created a blast inside, the photographs of which you would have, all of you would have seen. And the red building, after that, there was this double-story building. It has been completely decimated by precision targeting. Next, please. The target system, which was in the north, a series of buildings. I'll show you how it looked. Next. Completely destroyed by our precision targeting. Next. Now coming to Bhavalpur, this is the target complex that we are dealing with, a fairly large target complex. So we had to carefully choose the points that we needed to address, which were high value and which would meet our stated objectives of eliminating the terrorists. I would like to draw your attention to this red canopy, and in relation to that, I would cover the targets. One target system is a series of buildings here, other one here, and other one out here. Next slide, please. This is how it looked before, and this is how the building looked after the impact of the weapon. And orientation in relation to this red canopy, you can see here. Next, please. Before, next, and after. The roofs have completely collapsed. Next. This is the target system. Next. Precision targeting, and we have achieved our objectives here. Next. All right, so that was what we did on the 7th. Our objective was to address these two terrorist camps, and that we did with precision. And thereafter, we maintained a robust air defense posture, because remember, our objective was to target the terrorist and terrorist infrastructure, not any other infrastructure, not the Pakistani military, not the Pakistani any other infrastructure. So that is what we have maintained on the 7th of May. However, what we saw in the evening of 7th of May, we were saturated with a raid of Pakistani unmanned aerial vehicles and small drones. And these came in waves in our civilian areas, over our military installations, and all of them were successfully intercepted. Few of them did manage to land. However, there was not much damage that they did. And we have our robust counter-US hard kill and soft kill systems which did the job. However, the difference here was that we had targeted the terrorists. The adversary now has targeted our civilians and the military infrastructure. So it had to be responded to. So in a quick and calibrated response, that very night, we struck their radar installations at Lahore and close to Gujranwala, the LYT installation, to indicate to him that we are ready, yet we do not want to escalate. Our fight was with the terrorists and not with the Pakistani military establishment. Thank you.
Thank you, Air Marshal Bharti. So, ladies and gentlemen, he's outlined operations not only on the night of 6th and 7th of May, when Operation Sindoor commenced, but also on the subsequent night. Being well aware and familiar with the congenital and impulsive nature of our adversary, and even though we did attempt to reach out and communicate our compulsions to strike at the heart of terror to my counterpart in the immediate wake of Operation Sindoor, the request was brusquely turned down, with an intimation that a severe response was inevitable and in the offing. We were, of course, prepared. Operations on the 7th and the 8th, Air Marshal Bharti spoken about. On the night of 8th and 9th of May, they flew drones and aircrafts into our airspace all across the borders and made largely unsuccessful attempts to target numerous military infrastructure. Violations on the line of control by Pakistan also commenced yet again and precipitated into fierce arty engagements. The air operations on the night of 8th and 9th of May, I'll yet again request the DG Air Operations to cover.
So I just covered what happened on the night of 7th and 8th. What we found that on the night of 8th and 9th, starting as early as 22:30 hours, our cities had a mass raid of drones, unmanned aerial vehicles, UCAVs, starting right from Srinagar, going down right up to Nalia. It was a mass raid in waves, and it was relentless. However, we were prepared, and our air defense preparedness ensured that there is no damage on ground or to any of the intended targets that the enemy might have planned for. The difference between 7th night and 8th night was that on 7th night, he sent in his Yeha class of UAVs. However, these UAVs can go some distance, they are armed. However, on the 8th, less numbers of armed UCAVs were there or UAVs were there, and more numbers of quadcopters, maybe for surveillance or just for harassment of civilians. This continued till midnight. Our air defense preparedness ensured that there was no damage on the ground, either to the military installations or to the civilians. However, the enemy had yet again shown that he wanted to up the ante and he wanted a fight, and we were up to the task. In a measured and calibrated response, we once again targeted his military installations, which included his SAM sites at Malirkant. This also included his surveillance radar sites at Lahore and close to Gujranwala. These were suitably addressed, and thereafter his drone attacks continued even till morning, which we countered, and during the daytime there was some respite. Here I would like to bring out another aspect. What we found was that while the drone attacks were being launched from somewhere close to Lahore, enemy had allowed his civilian aircraft to also continue to fly out of Lahore. Not only his own aircraft, but international passenger aircraft, which is quite insensitive, and we had to exercise extreme caution, even at the cost of some tactical disadvantage, to ensure that there is no damage to any of the civilian aircraft. And this was also brought out in our press briefing during the day. So I will now hand over to my colleague to cover the events of 9th onwards.
On land, we also undertook certain measures such as deployment of air defense and electronic warfare assets to establish an integrated grid with the Indian Air Force. And I have seen and heard some of you wax eloquent about the benefits of such an architecture when it comes to negating and combating air intrusions. We also carried out deployment to include movement of our forces in the land, sea, and air domains. The night of the 9th and the 10th of May saw similar intrusions by drones and aircrafts. And this time, there was a concerted effort to target airfields and some very, very important logistic installations, albeit yet again unsuccessful and denied gallantly and efficiently, I must say, by the integrated Indian Air Force and Indian Army Air Defense. We further strengthened our deployment and also initiated some pressure points to send a very clear and unambiguous message to the other side to desist from any misadventures on land. Some of the airfields and dumps saw repeated attacks in waves from the air. All were thwarted. The Pakistan Army has reported to have lost approximately 35 to 40 personnel in artillery and small arms firing on the line of control between the 7th and the 10th of May. What the other side had probably also not reckoned with was the speedy and precise turnaround and hit back by the Indian Air Force. And I will yet again ask Air Marshal Bharti to speak about these significant and game-changing strikes. I will thereafter request Vice Admiral Pramod, my colleague and Director General of Naval Operations, to tell us about some very telling naval maneuvers in the Arabian Sea that exerted pressure on the night of 9th and 10th of May. Over to you, sir.
Commencing about 2000 hours, that is 8 p.m. local time, on 8th of May, several Pakistani unmanned aerial systems, drones, combat vehicles attacked multiple IF bases. These included Jammu, Udhampur, Pathankot, Amritsar, Bhatinda, Nal, Dalhousie, Thois, Jaisalmer, Uttarlai, Falodi, Nalia. These were almost simultaneous and they came in waves. All our AD guns and other systems were waiting for them. All these waves were neutralized by our trained crew using the air defense systems that they have. And also, some of them were utilized using our legacy systems like Pechoras and IF Summer, which we have recently acquired. And some were neutralized by the Garud snipers. There was no damage on ground from these incursions and these mass raids, if I could call them, from the Pakistani side. However, following these relentless attacks on our air bases, on our forward positions, and on our civilian targets, this was time to convey some message to our adversaries. And therefore, a decision was taken to strike where it would hurt. And towards that, in a swift, coordinated, calibrated attack, we struck his air bases, command centers, military infrastructure, air defense systems across the entire Western Front. The bases we struck include Chaklala, Rafiki, and mind you, Chaklala is Islamabad, Rahim Yar Khan, Sakar, sending a clear message that aggression will not be tolerated. This was followed by strikes at Sargoda, Bholari, Jacobabad, We also struck the C2 centers at Murid, the UAE complex at Murid, Rafiki, radar at Chunia, which I will show you, Rahim Yar Khan airfield, and the unmanned combat aerial vehicle hangar at Sakar. I would like to reiterate here that we have the capability to target every system at these bases and more. However, it was only a measured response to instill good wisdom to our adversary to refrain from further escalation. IF response was directed only at military installations, avoiding civilian and collateral damage. I would now like to show you some of the effects that have been achieved as a result of our air operation. Here is the Pasroor air defense system, if you could see. Zoomed up view. This is the radar mounted on a high tower. And after the strike, can you hear me? Yeah, thank you. And after the strike, this is what has happened. This radar has been taken out, completely burnt. Next slide, please. The Chunia air defense radar, which was taken out on 7th and 8th. This is the radar site. A blown up photograph, once again, on a tower. Not very clear, but what you see very clearly is the after effect after we have stuck. The radar head has been completely decapitated. Next slide, please. Arifwala air defense radar. In this complex, you see how it looked before, blown up image, and after really blown up. Next. Now coming to Sargodha airfield. Remember, this is one of their important airfields wherein they have a lot of assets, F-16s, other assets which they keep getting, training institutes. And we have stuck this airfield. It is not, if you zoom in here, then one impact point here on the runway and second impact point of our weapon, precision weapon on the runway. And if you see this blown up, repairing going on. Same here. Next. Rahim Yar Khan. This is the area we have stuck. A deep strike out here and one complex here. So this is how it looked before, and same, you see a big crater, another crater here, and this complex after strike neutralized. Next. Chaklala airfield, Noor Khan, once again a major air base, a lot of their logistic assets out here. This was the chosen complex that we intended to strike and convey a message. Next slide, please. This is how it looked before, and this is how it looked after our strike. Next. Sakar. We chose the radar site at Sakar. This is the radar site. And after it was struck, this is the aftermath, completely burnt out. Next, please. Aircraft shelter. This is how it looked before the strike, and this is how it looked after the strike. The roof of the buildings completely caved in and burnt. Next. Bolari airfield. Aircraft hangar. This is how it looked before, and this is how it looked after the precision strike. Next. Jacobabad aircraft hangar, and this is how it looked after. Next. So what I'm trying to convey here, ladies and gentlemen, is to start with, our fight was neither with the Pakistani military nor with anybody else who's there on the other side. Our fight was with the terrorists. We neutralized the terrorists that we selected to be neutralized, and thereafter, we only maintained the air defense posture. However, we were relentlessly pounded by waves after waves, night after night, by his UCAVs, by his drones, and by his other unmanned aerial systems. And that left us with no choice but to retaliate, and yet our retaliation was calibrated, it was graduated, and it was proportionate. Thank you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. In the aftermath of the cowardly attacks on innocent tourists at Pahalgam in Jammu and Kashmir by Pakistani-sponsored terrorists on 22nd April, the Indian Navy's Carrier Battle Group, surface forces, submarines, and aviation assets were immediately deployed at sea with full combat readiness in concert with the joint operation plan of the Indian Defence Forces. You may be aware that we tested and refined tactics and procedures at sea during multiple weapon firings in the Arabian Sea within 96 hours of the terrorist attack. The aim was to revalidate our crew, armament, equipment, and platform readiness to deliver various ordnance on selected targets precisely. Thereafter, our forces remained forward deployed in the Northern Arabian Sea in a dissuasive and deterrent posture with full readiness and capacity to strike select targets at sea and on land, including Karachi at time of our choosing. The forward deployment of the Indian Navy compelled Pakistani naval and air units to be in a defensive posture, mostly inside harbors or very close to the coast, which we monitored continuously. The Indian Navy maintained seamless maritime domain awareness throughout the duration and was entirely aware of the location and movement of Pakistani units. In effect, we had and continue to have good battle space transparency using our maritime domain awareness grid. As you are aware, our response has been measured, proportionate, non-escalatory, and responsible from day one. Accordingly, the calibrated approach considered all options, including the ability of the Indian Navy for offensive action from and at sea. As part of this escalation control mechanism, the application of force by the Navy was planned in a synchronized manner in coordination with the Army and Air Force, the highlight being teams from the three services working closely in an integrated manner. Along with the kinetic actions by the Indian Army and Indian Air Force, the overwhelming operational edge of Indian Navy at sea contributed towards Pakistan's urgent request for a ceasefire yesterday. As we speak, Indian Navy remains deployed at sea in a credible deterrent posture to respond decisively to any inimical action by Pakistan or Pakistan-based terrorists. Thank you. Samno Varna, Jai Hind. Now I'll hand over to Director General Military Operations for further proceedings.
Ladies and gentlemen, on the 10th of May, in the morning, even as we were getting into a huddle to wargame the events of the previous night, a routine exercise, I received a message on hotline from my counterpart in Pakistan seeking my willingness to communicate. Since our initial aim was to strike at terror camps, and all our actions in the subsequent days were in response to the intrusions and violations by the Pakistan Air Force and its army, it was decided that I would indeed speak with my counterpart. You are already aware, I've seen it being covered on national television, that my communication with the Pak DGMO was conducted at 15:35 hours yesterday and resulted in cessation of cross-border firing and air intrusions by either side with effect from 1700 hours 10th of May, after he proposed that we cease hostilities. We also decided to further speak on the 12th of May, that's tomorrow, at 1200 hours, to discuss the modalities that would enable the longevity of this understanding. However, disappointingly, and must I add, expectedly, it took only a couple of hours for the Pakistan Army to violate these arrangements by cross-border and across the line of control firing, followed by drone intrusions across the expanse of the Western Front through last night and in the early hours of the morning today. These violations were responded to robustly and dealt with as they must be. We have earlier today sent another hotline message to my counterpart highlighting these violations of the understanding between the DGMOs on the 10th of May and our firm and clear intent to respond to these fiercely and punitively, if repeated tonight, subsequently, or later. In this regard, I must inform all of you that the Chief of Army Staff has earlier today conducted a security review and has granted full authority to our Army commanders for counter-actions in the kinetic domain in case of any violation by Pakistan. In the end, I pay my solemn homage to my 5 fallen colleagues and brothers from the armed forces and civilians who have tragically lost their lives in Operation Sindoor. Our hearts go out to the bereaved families, and we express our solidarity to them in this lifetime and beyond, at this grave juncture in their lives. Their sacrifices shall always be remembered and spoken of in glowing terms by a grateful nation. We have thus far, ladies and gentlemen, exercised, and my colleague Pramod highlighted this, immense restraint, and our actions have been focused, measured, and non-escalatory. However, any threat to the sovereignty, territorial integrity, and safety of our citizens will be met with decisive force. Jai Hind.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we are now open for questions. All right, now since I would not know all of you, I would expect you to please raise the placard or your hand, and once I indicate, I expect you to please give out your name and the media group that you belong to. Keep your questions short so that we can take as many questions as possible. Also, ladies and gentlemen, kindly bear in mind that confidential aspects may not be answered by the 3 DGMOs. Right. I've got a lot of hands here. Let me start from the left. Left foot always in front when we start marching. So here we have to the left, okay. Yeah, 238.
Hello. So this is Manas Pratimhuyan from PTI, Press Trust of India. So the understanding that was reached yesterday on stopping the military operations and actions, was it for just 3 days? And what would be the cost escalation if there is violation of this understanding by the Pakistani side? And my subsequent question would be that we have a kind of ceasefire agreement with Pakistan that was finalized in 2003. So will there be some kind of similarities in frameworks between the two kind of understandings, 2003 ceasefire agreement and the current understanding on stopping military operations? And again, what are the cost that will be incurring on Pakistan if Pakistan again resorts to this kind of terrorist activities, because we have made it very clear that the cost will be very high. So I would like to have your thoughts on it.
Okay, so I'll answer the latter part of the question first. I also want to add that while the initial ceasefire agreement, as you correctly pointed out, is of the 2003 vintage, but I must remind you that in 2021, in the month of February, and this was then when the crisis in Eastern Ladakh was also on, the two DGMOs had spoken and arrived at a ceasefire understanding that lasted right up until this unfortunate attack at Pahalgam. Once our Foreign Secretary had announced the decisions of the CCS in the immediate wake of that attack, he had announced certain measures. And then, of course, Pakistan had in turn made its own announcements. Since then, there have been certain violations of this ceasefire understanding. And of course, after the 7th of May, like I pointed out during my statement, that there have been numerous violations on the line of control especially, and of course, along the international boundary by the Pakistan Army and the Pakistan Air Force. This understanding that we spoke about yesterday, no, it was not for 3 days. It was first to stop aggressive and hostile activities immediately, let that order and direction settle down for about 36 hours, and thereafter discuss modalities, like I said, to ensure its longevity. That is tomorrow on the 12th of May. But unfortunately, we had a violation starting at approximately 1900 hours last night. And we've sent a communique, like I said, to the Pakistan Military Operations Directorate, and we will await to what happens tonight.
All right.
The cost escalation, I mean, I'll leave it to your best imagination. I've already said that the response will be fierce and punitive.
Now, the right foot forward. Yeah.
Sir, I'm Ajit Dubey from ANI, sir. Sir, my question is that you talked about the loss of lives to the Pakistan army, that was around 35 to 40 kills secured by the Indian army. Sir, can you tell us what would be the total loss of life to the Pakistan army in both army and air force attacks, sir? And how good was the performance of the BrahMos, Scalp and the S-400 during the operations? And sir, since we have sir, just one line,
No multiple questions,
sir.
All right.
And since sir, we have achieved such a spectacular, we have made good achievements in this entire operation. Can we say that we have emerged victorious, or we have a big upper hand over the Pakistanis in this entire conflict? Thank you very much, sir.
So I'll answer the question about the loss of lives on the other side. Of course, there are various means to ascertain that number. There is information from various agencies that come in. There are, of course, on the line of control, other ways to find out as to what has been the effect of what you are doing there in ceasefire violations. So therefore, I mentioned 35 to 40 on the line of control, and please remember that once Operation Sindoor was launched, the responses of the Pakistan Army were also on Indian Army or the Indian Armed Forces infrastructure. Let me put it that way. So that's why I did not cover casualties of the Pakistan Army, at least in the initial phases of battle, because those were not our targets. Our targets were terror oriented. And of course, later, once they launched air intrusions and air operations on our infrastructure, we've used heavier weapons, and of course, there would have been casualties, but those are still being assessed. The effects of the weapons that you mentioned, I will request Air Marshal Bharti to apprise all of you about those.
Good evening, Mr. Chief. How are you? Ajit, okay, the meeting sometime. I never mentioned about any of the weapons that we use. Check. Okay. What I was saying, that I never mentioned of any of the weapons, the caliber that we used. All right, so we leave it at that. Those are matters of operational details which I would not like to go into. But suffice to say that whatever methods and whatever means we have chosen, it had the desired effects on the enemy targets. How many casualties? How many injuries? Well, to start with, our aim was not to inflict casualties, but in case there have been, it is for them to count. Our job is to hit the target, not to count the body bags.
And the last part of your question, I wonder if you read out the tweet on ADGPI at midnight once we'd done what we had to in Operation Sindoor. And that's credit to my friend here on the left. Justice has been served, Ajit. That is all that I will say.
Ajit, I'll request you to, refrain putting words into his mouth. All right. Yeah, I'll come back to the left. 147. Sorry, 47. No, 47. Did I see it here or? Yeah.
Good
I
evening,
saw it there.
gentlemen.
Sorry, 147, I saw it there. Sorry. Yeah, since I've already said 147, start please.
Hi, sir. Good evening. This is Shivam Patel from Reuters News Agency. Thank you for giving me the opportunity. My question, sir, is how many military targets did Indian Armed Forces strike in Pakistan in response to the attacks from Pakistan? How were these targets selected? And how many troop casualties have been there in total on both sides, if you give details? Thank you.
I'm sorry, where are you? I haven't
Yeah,
spotted his.
he's to the
Yeah,
right.
okay. Can you just repeat that for me, please?
Sure, sir. So my name is Shivam Patel. I'm from Reuters News Agency. My question is, how many military targets in total did the Indian Armed Forces strike in Pakistan in response to the attack from Pakistan? How were these targets selected? And how many troop casualties have been there on both sides, if you can?
So you're speaking of the targets that I mentioned in the wake of the attack at Pahalgam, right? Yeah, I think it's amply clear to everybody here that the Pakistan Army has not crossed the international boundary, neither in the plain sector nor on the line of control. So the intrusions have been in the air. There have been certain attempts on the line of control when ceasefire violations have been on to try and infiltrate and carry out and perpetrate activities that we are all very well familiar with. Whether these are by terrorists or by the Pakistan Army or its special forces and commandos is difficult to say, but each of these have been effectively thwarted. So therefore, as far as engagements of military targets on the other side is concerned, I thought Air Marshal Bharti covered those very well and in detail. And he also mentioned as to how they went about targeting those. I think those images were very clear and very, very graphic in telling us as to what we needed to hit. And you'll remember that right at the outset, I said that we even went into what was the construction in each of these locations, and therefore decided on the vector that had to be utilized. Please.
Okay, if I could add to what the DGMO has said, I have already detailed the targets. Now, whether it is X numbers or Y numbers is that is immaterial. And what damage have we inflicted? You have seen. What are the casualties on the other side? As I said, that is for them to count. As far as we are concerned, from the air defense side, if they had a choice, they would have definitely come in. They are fighters, there are more numbers of UCAVs. It is not that they did not intend to come in. It is only that our robust AD posture prevented them from coming in. So that must be known, and that must be realized by all the audience here.
Yeah, I'll come to the left now, 24.
Good evening, sir. This is Anuvesh Rath from Z. Sir, I wanted to know on the first briefing, which was done by FS and two representatives from Air Force and Army, you showed a list where there was 21 places in that list. You have stuck 9. Are more operations going to be held? Is Operation Sindoor still on? And the second question, thank you, sir.
Thank you so much.
And also, I want to congratulate all three of you for a fantastic operation that you guys have done.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that one question. Yeah.
Sir, the question. Unfortunately, Rath, is that your name? I'm sorry. You know, as far as operational details are concerned, I am not in a position to share those right now. But I think I'll take a cue from Pramod. You know, he said towards the end that the Indian Navy is still in a posture that is deterrent. And I have already made it very clear towards the end of what I said that it's only a couple of hours ago that the Chief of Army Staff has carried out a security review, and he's authorized our Army commanders to deal with violations of any kind from across the borders in a manner that they deem fit. So again, to reiterate, the response will be fierce and it will be punitive.
I'll go back this side now. Yeah, 255. She said middle wale kya karenge? So 255. Oh, sorry.
Good evening, sir.
Yeah, 255.
I'm Shailesh from National Defense. Please allow me, first of all, to pay my gratitude for protecting us Indians. Thank you very much. Sir, since the enemy has been talking about taking down our aerial platforms, it would be deemed fit in case we can reveal that we have taken down their fighter jets. What could be the number? Though you said that they may be not good to reveal the platforms, but since this has come from various quarters in Pakistan, so I believe that we need to answer, in case if you can, sir, if you may allow.
The question is for me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and if I get it right, you want to know how many of their planes we have downed?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
All right. See, as I said, their planes were prevented from coming inside our border. All right. So we do not have the wreckage with us, but definitely we have downed a few planes. Numbers, we would not like to hazard a guess out here. Okay. I have the numbers, okay, and we are getting into the technical details of it to establish it. So I would not like to put a figure at this time, but definitely there are losses from their side which we have inflicted.
Were they,
Please don't ask.
were they fourth generation plus, sir?
No,
See,
sir,
you're putting words into my mouth. Why do
Sir,
you say fourth generation? Let us make it high tech.
Thank you so much, sir.
all
Thank
right. Yeah, 163.
तो मैं मंजीत नेगी हूँ आज तक से। मेरा सवाल ये है कि इस पूरे ऑपरेशन में जो आतंकी ठिकानों को निशाना बनाया गया, क्या नंबर्स कुछ बता सकते हैं कितने आतंकी मारे गए? कुछ नाम सरकार मतलब कुछ नाम मीडिया में आए भी हैं जो बड़े उसके मास्टरमाइंड थे। और एक सवाल जो आज एयरफोर्स ने भी एक ट्वीट किया कि ऑपरेशन सिंदूर अभी जारी है और सरकार की तरफ से भी कहा गया। और पिछली बार जब विदेश मंत्रालय की प्रेस कॉन्फ्रेंस पहली हुई थी उसमें वो लिस्ट दिखाई गई थी कि 21 टेरर कैंप आइडेंटिफाई किए गए हैं। तो क्या जो बाकी बचे हुए टेरर कैंप है उन पर भी कार्रवाई होगी? और एक नंबर अगर आप बता पाएं कितने टेररिस्ट मारे गए?
Manjeet ji, 3 questions. The third one has just been asked here before. So 21, this thing. So I'll request the first two to be answered so that we have more number of people who can ask.
मंजीत, जब मैंने स्टेटमेंट दिया तो मैंने शुरू में ही कहा कि जैसे ही ऑपरेशन सिंदूर कॉन्सेप्चुअलाइज हुआ तो हमारा जो पीछे की कार्रवाई होती है स्पेड वर्क और टारगेट्स को आइडेंटिफाई और एनालाइज करने की कार्रवाई शुरू हो गई थी। मैंने जब स्टेटमेंट दिया तो मैंने बताया कि बहुत सारे थे, हमने 21 दिखाए होंगे और भी हैं, लेकिन वो लिस्ट फिल्टर करते करते 21 तक पहुंची। अब क्या आगे एंगेज किए जाएंगे? अगर जरूरत पड़ेगी तो जरूर एंगेज किए जाएंगे, लेकिन मैंने बताया कि इस समय जो इंट एजेंसीज ने हमें बताया कि फलाने कैंप में प्रेजेंस है, हमने उनको एंगेज किया। कुछ नाम मैंने लिए, कुछ नाम अभी पुख्ता किए जा रहे हैं। मैंने आपको बताया कि जो इंट एजेंसीज ने अभी तक असेसमेंट किया है उसमें उन्होंने कहा है कि तकरीबन 100 से ज़्यादा मारे गए हैं। और एक आज आपने तस्वीर भी देखी कि काफ़ी प्रोमिनेंट जो फ्यूनरल था, काफ़ी प्रोमिनेंट एक जो हस्ती हैं वो ऑर्गेनाइज कर रहे थे, और उस फ्यूनरल में और कौन कौन लोग अटेंड कर रहे थे वो तो आपने देखा ही। तो आप लोग सब समझदार हैं और मुझे ये कहने की ज़रूरत नहीं है कि इन लोगों को कहाँ से सपोर्ट मिल रहा है। अगर नहीं मिल रहा होता तो ऑपरेशन सिंदूर नहीं होता, तो उसी की वजह से है ये ऑपरेशन। तो मेरे ख्याल से मैंने आपके सारे सवालों का जवाब दे दिया है।
Ma'am. Sir, next is from 17.
सर, मेरा नाम अंजू निर्वाण है, GV9 भारतवर्ष से। सर, मेरा सवाल ये है कि ऑपरेशन सिंदूर में हमारी जो इंडियन नेवी है उसके बारे में सर थोड़ा सा बताएं कि किस तरह की उसकी भूमिका रही, क्योंकि हमने इस दौरान सर देखा कि बहुत सारी स्पेकुलेशन भी रही और ये बोला गया कि कराची तक हमारी नेवी ने ऑपरेशन किया है। तो सर इस पे थोड़ी सी क्लैरिटी चाहिए। और सर हमने कौन कौन से फाइटर एयरक्राफ्ट डाउन किए हैं, अगर उसका भी थोड़ा सा क्लैरिटी मिल जाए तो अच्छा रहेगा।
तो मैं आपका पहले सवाल का जवाब दूंगा। I will make few sentences and leave it for your imagination. First of all, as I mentioned, we have quantitative and qualitative edge to deliver a massive blow to our adversary, and we completely dominate in the maritime front. Indian Navy's action is part of the escalation ladder mechanism which we have worked out amongst 3 services. This time, if Pakistan dare take any action, and Pakistan knows it, what we are going to do. That's all.
आपके सवाल का जवाब मैं पहले दे चुका हूं। आपके सवाल का जवाब मैं पहले दे चुका हूं, इसलिए मैं बस उस तक ही सीमित रखूंगा और इतना कहना चाहूंगा कि आने वाले दिनों में आपको खुद ही पता चल जाएगा, और ऐसी बातें छुपी नहीं रहती हैं, तो पता चल जाएगा। So at this time we'll just let it be.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we have 1 or 2 more questions, sir. So, please, they are going to be outside. You can speak to them there also. 104. 104. Yeah, ask.
Sir, Dinakar with the Hindu newspaper.
Are
Sir,
you surprised that you got this question?
No, sir. Just look. Sir, can you give a number of assets we lost, because there's been a lot of speculation going on, international media writing a lot of things about our platforms, including Rafales. I mean, Pakistan claiming that Rafale has been downed, etc. Can you put that question to rest and clarify on that?
I guess that question is for me. All right, I'm happy that you've asked this question. You know, we are in a combat scenario, and losses are a part of combat. The question that you must ask us, okay, and indeed that we must ask ourselves, you inclusive, is have we achieved our objectives? Have we achieved our objective of decimating that terrorist camp? And the answer is a thumping yes. And the results are for the whole world to see. As for the details, what could have been, how many numbers, which platform did we lose? You know, at this time, I would not like to comment on that, because we are still in a combat situation. And if I comment on anything, it will only be adversary. So we don't want to give him any advantage at this stage. All I can say is that we have achieved our objectives that we selected, and all our pilots are back home. Thank you.
Okay, hold. Please don't. Please be civil here. So we'll have 220 now.
हेलो सर, दिस इज अनीता चौधरी सर फ्रॉम स्वदेश न्यूज़पेपर। मेरा सवाल है, क्योंकि ये हमारे जो पहले जो एक्शन रहा वो आतंकवाद के खिलाफ रहा, तो आतंकवाद में अजहर मसूद की तरफ से एक बयान जारी किया गया था जिसमें उन्होंने कहा कि हम इसका बदला लेंगे और जार जार रुलाएंगे। तो क्या अगला, अगर खुदा न खास्ता अगला टेरर अटैक किसी भी तरह का होता है, तो क्या उसे एक्ट ऑफ वॉर में हमारी तरफ से लिया जाएगा और उसका क्या माकूल जवाब दिया जा सकता है?
मेरा इसमें सिर्फ एक ही जवाब है आपके लिए कि हमने अपनी कार्रवाई करी। हमने उसके बाद मैंने अपने स्टेटमेंट में भी बताया कि ये कम्युनिकेट करने की कोशिश करी कि हमने इस तरीके से ये जो स्ट्राइक्स हैं वो क्यों की। लेकिन जो हमारा एडवर्सरी है उसने जैसे मुनासिब समझा वो कार्रवाई करी। तो आपने देखा कि ये जो एक्टिविटीज़ चल रही हैं 3-4 दिन से, ये कोई वॉर से कम नहीं है। नॉर्मल सर्कमस्टांसेस में एक दूसरे देश की एयरफोर्सेस हवा में नहीं उड़ती हैं और एक दूसरे के ऊपर स्ट्राइक्स नहीं करती हैं। हर रात इंट्रूजन्स नहीं होते हैं। लाइन ऑफ कंट्रोल पर सीज फायर वायोलेशंस, आपके एक साथी ने सवाल पूछा था शुरू में, एक सीज फायर अंडरस्टैंडिंग था, वो भी जा चुका है। उस सीज फायर अंडरस्टैंडिंग के जाते जो फायरिंग हो रही है लाइन ऑफ कंट्रोल में, उसमें घुसपैठ की कोशिश हो रही है। आमतौर पर ये घुसपैठ लाइन ऑफ कंट्रोल में टेररिस्ट करते हैं, लेकिन हमें इंफॉर्मेशन है कि हो सकता है ये पाकिस्तान आर्मी की टोलियां भी हों जो हमारे पोस्ट के ऊपर खामी पहुंचाने की कोशिश कर रही हैं। तो ये सारी एक्टिविटीज तो वॉर में शामिल हैं। तो ये कहना मुश्किल है कि आगे क्या होगा, वो स्पेक्यूलेटिव जोन में आ जाता है और मैं स्पेक्यूलेट नहीं करना चाहता। हर एक सिचुएशन अलग होती है और उससे एक तरीके से डील किया जाता है।
मैं एक सवाल इसका मैं जवाब देना चाहता हूँ, 1 मिनट। जो मिलिट्री होता, our main job is to prevent war and maintain peace and stability. So it is not that our response is a graded response. That means अगर किसी ने किया तो उसको graded उसमें किया, जैसे टेररिस्ट एक्शन हुआ तो what we did is a terrorist action and then we destroyed all the terrorist camps. उसके बाद आपने देखा कि उनने थोड़ा सा कोशिश किया तो हमारे एयरफोर्स और आर्मी ने क्या किया, तो मिलिट्री टारगेट्स हैं उनको उनके ऊपर थोड़ा. So our aim is to maintain peace and tell them our adversary that you do this and the response will be bloody.
Okay, now as per the, please, we'll have 166 and 25, and after that, no more, please.
Sir, this side.
Ladies and gentlemen, please
Sir.
maintain,
Sir,
I
this side,
request you to
sir.
please be quiet.
Jal Ghai,
No,
this side, sir.
we have only two
Sir,
questions left, 166. Yeah, please start.
So I'm Rahul Singh from Hindustan Times, sir. So, so you were totally on top of the game in the kind of losses you've inflicted on the enemy. I mean, we saw the slides and everything. So it kind of comes across that you were batting it 99 and you decided to declare your innings. What are your thoughts on that, sir? And do you think, are you weighing the option of the Pakistan army using this time, buying this time of the so-called ceasefire, or the understanding? And you talked about how they could not be trusted. So buying time to kind of build up their war reserves, getting stuff from their friends, like Turkey or China, are we considering that possibility, sir?
Look, see, the call came from the Pakistani side to speak about cessation of hostilities. What pauses mean during such conflicts is known to everybody. You know, I don't want to go into the pros and cons of how preparation for war is made. You know, that is a process in itself. But I think my senior colleague here, the DG Air Operations, spoke, or he alluded at least, you know, to what this operation was precisely and specifically meant for. And I think that's something that we achieved, you know, right at the outset. Had we had the option not to go further, we probably wouldn't have. But we've been compelled to be in this situation. And as you've seen, the armed forces of India, and you know, you've got the three Director Generals sitting here, we are always prepared to face any eventuality. And like I said, that's for the sovereignty, the territorial integrity, and the safety of our citizens. So whatever has to be done will be done. You know, I'm not so concerned about what Pakistan will do in this time. I'm only concerned about what we will do. We have a roadmap and a plan, and we will follow it diligently, and we will follow it to the T. You know, that's the contention that I want to make here today.
Ma'am, please. Okay, the last question, and ma'am, 25, she's been asking since
Sir.
the first part.
Sir, I'm Nandita. Sir,
She's not asking a question.
Sir, I'm Nandita Dagar, DAGAR from DD News and DD India. Sir, I wanted to ask you that my question is to General Ghai. Sir, you spoke to your counterpart yesterday and the Pakistani counterpart. Sir, what is the Indian Army's assessment that despite that agreement, that talk that you had, despite that agreement coming into effect at 1700 hours yesterday, why did they violate it? And number two, yesterday at the joint Defense Ministry and Foreign Ministry briefing, Wing Commander Vyomika Singh and Colonel Sophia Qureshi had told us that we have cited the Pakistani troops amassing at the borders and at the LOC. Sir, has that situation changed? Have they withdrawn? And sir, if in case, despite now there is a lull, of course, but if tonight again, if the enemy again carries out shelling and aerial intrusions through drones, what is going to be our response? Thank you.
So without outlining the specifics of that response, I've already made it clear that there will be a response and it will be fierce and it will be punitive. Why the Pakistan army chose the option of violating the understanding that was arrived at earlier yesterday, I think that's a question that we best answered by the Pakistan DGMO. I wouldn't be able to, give you that. But, in situations such as these, and if you go back into any conflict, sometimes these understandings take time, to fructify and manifest on ground. But without, getting into the reasons, it is our mandate to be prepared at all times, and that we were. It's not as if because there was an understanding we weren't prepared. I must tell you that the armed forces were on a very, very high alert, and they continue to be in that state even as we speak.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, please, ma'am, please. Okay, thank you so much for coming today. Those who have missed asking a question, those who have missed, see, I knew I'll grab this attention from you like this. Those who have missed the opportunity to ask a question can give me a written one. I will definitely get back to you with that. And also, they are they are invited for a cup of tea in my office day after tomorrow. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Jai Hind.
Jai Hind.